Okay, so I think now we are recording. So welcome again to everyone that joined us. Today I am joined by two other AI Guild members, Andrew and Irena, and we are going to talk about the data career, so the different roles that we have in industry, the data analyst, data engineer, data scientist, among others.
Hi, everyone. Also,
here I have some. Yes, please come and say hi. I have here just one slide to talk a bit about the motivation why we are doing this. So perhaps you'll notice that this is the 9th time that we are hosting the same webinar. Each time we have a different host. And the reason why we do this is motivated by this, can be motivated by this quote from Jean-François Gagné. He is an AI researcher who has been doing some yearly reports about the state of AI and the professionals that work in AI, so both in industry and also researchers. And the idea here is that I can highlight where he says that it only takes 4 years of experience to become a senior AI researcher or 5 years of experience to lead an entire institute. So what we see here is that, like illustrated by the icon, it's not, because also the field is new, it's not hard or it doesn't take too long for you to develop an expertise and become a senior. Though it's not so easy to understand before you start what kind of skills one needs or how does one develop inside a career, and maybe even what is the best role for you among all of those roles, beyond only the most famous, which is the data scientist, right? So today we want to share with you from our collective experience as the AI Guild community, and also invite you to join our practitioner community. And specifically, we want to hear from Andrew about his journey. But before we start, we would like to get to know a little bit of you who are attending with us today. So I will send a survey with 3 questions for you to answer. You should have, you should receive it already. And you can click around to let us know a little bit more about you, please. While you do that, we are going to introduce ourselves. The first one is Irena.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you also for coming and joining us today. So before introducing myself, I just want to say it's the 3rd time for me to be in the webinar. 2 times I was a special guest together with Dania and Chris. And today is the first time for me to be here as a host. So yeah, thanks for the invitation, so to say, and it's my honor to host this webinar from now on together with Dania. And I'm also happy to introduce myself shortly and to co-lead today's meeting. My name is Irena. I am with the AI Guild since its very beginning. I am currently also accredited practitioner. We will speak about the accreditation of the AI Guild also during today's meeting. I have experience in data science and data analytics. I mostly work in marketing. I currently work at Zalando as a data scientist, and I have a PhD in applied mathematics. So yeah, thanks again for joining us today. And anytime also feel free to add any questions or notes, whatever you have. And yeah, I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Irena. We have next here, it's me. So my name is Dania. I am the founding member of the AI Guild, and I'm currently leading the Data Lift, which is an online event series about use cases in production. In my career as a data scientist, I have worked mainly with machine learning models for predictive analytics. And before, I was also teaching at a data science bootcamp. I started my career in 2012, back in my home country, Brazil, as a marketing analyst. And then I moved on to be a data scientist. And since Irena mentioned, I am running this online event series from the beginning, hosting for you. Always inviting someone from the AI Guild to be with me, so 2 people each time. Really happy about it, about having you also, Irena, as the first time as a host, and from now on also. And now we have Andrew.
Hi, yeah, I'm Andrew. This is my first time being a special guest here, and I'm happy to be here. You'll hear a bit more about my career later, but right now I'm a head coach of data analytics at Neuefische, which is a tech bootcamp based in Hamburg, but we operate all over Germany now. And yeah, I don't want to go too much into everything now, but most recently, before joining Neuefische, I was at FreeNow, or My Taxi, which is a big European ride hailer, and was the head of analytics and in general working there for about 5 years. And I'll go a little bit more into the details later. Happy to be here.
Cool. And maybe now it was also enough time for you all to answer our questions. Let me finish it and share the results with you. Can you confirm that you see also the results of the poll? Yeah. Okay, so we see here that most of you are located in another place in the world. We do have some people from Berlin or from Germany in Europe. And most of you are also less than 1 year in a data role, which is cool because this is the target also for our most of the things that we are going to talk about. And we know that it's questions that people have right at the beginning of their careers. And which role are you mostly interested in? I'm not surprised to see that it's the data scientist, is the most famous one. Maybe by the end of the 1.5 hours together, you also find one of the other roles interesting. So let's get started. Oh yeah, before getting started, we have here the overview of what we plan to do today. So the webinar is split in 4 sections. The first one, we are going to talk about the effort of the AI Guild in advancing data careers. Then the next part is really about the different roles, like the title of the webinar says. Then we go specifically in one journey. So in this case, today is Andrew's data career journey, and we wrap it up giving some orientation regarding the labor market. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask by voice with your microphone and camera. Otherwise, you can also type the questions in the chat and we will answer them throughout the webinar. So you don't have to wait until the end. We are happy to answer all your questions, or that's the main reason why we do the event online. So you have the chance to ask your own questions and hear the answers. Cool, then I will hand it over now to Irena.
Yes, so thank you, Dania. I hope you can all hear me well. So just a few motivational slides regarding why we are doing the webinar and what is the motivation behind it, what we are trying to achieve and what we are trying to share with you. The learnings that we have acquired throughout the years, and also especially within the AI Guild and among all the members regarding the data careers, is that since this is a new field, and I think basically these are problems or challenges, let's say specifically for the data roles, is that to find the first or the second role might take more than 6 months. So this is something that is really often, and maybe since many of you are at the beginning of the journey, maybe this knowledge helps you not to feel too bad if you don't have a lot of success straight from the beginning. Yeah, so it's a new field, and yeah, for various reasons, it might take up some time to start the career in data science, or so I would call this data science, but just AI and yeah, whatever you call it, so machine learning. And then regarding the different roles, if it's a data analyst or data scientist or engineer, the switch can be also hard. And we also noticed that if you change inside the company, it might be a bit easier. This is specifically, for example, also my case. So I started as a data analyst at Zalando and then switched to a data science role later on. Then another problem, and this is, I think, one of the crucial one, is that if you are searching for a role, you might end up being confused by the variety of job descriptions and a variety of roles and expectations under certain names. So you could see a data science role with only reporting requirements, or you could see a data analyst role with deep learning knowledge and so on. So there is total chaos, so to say, which I think it's improving with time, but still it's a very common problem. And that's why we are here also today to answer some of your questions regarding the job advertisement and regarding the different roles. And yeah, finally, this is somehow also one of the, so to say, maybe findings after starting. So once you got there at your first role, you might see that this is not what you actually expected, or this is not what was even written in the expectation. So I think there are many, so to say, there are many opportunities, and usually the companies do know about all the opportunities that AI and machine learning data science is offering, but not everybody is being realistic about everything what is possible, especially regarding the data that the company has and experts and so on. So it might turn out that you are actually end up working something completely different from what you have imagined. And this is also something that we are happy to discuss today if you have some questions regarding this thing. And yeah, I think one of the goals of our webinar is to really go through the details of all these aspects of the careers in data science and help you understand and help you also avoid the obstacles that we mentioned. Next slide. And now what we see in the market, I mean, in the final slides, we will discuss the current market situation a bit more in details. But still here, we also want to mention that it is, again, a challenge that there is no strict specialization and differentiation of roles. Until recently, there was not a clear educational path. How do you become a data scientist or analyst or engineer? So I think now this is starting to change, but still it's a question, and people from a variety of backgrounds can actually become expert and specialize in the data science roles. And yeah, that is proof of concept. We will come to that. The second one is the raising value of domain expertise. So one thing is that yeah, the companies are searching for people who are knowledge and have expertise in a specific machine learning, let's say, model, or in a specific part of data science on one hand. But on the other hand, the domain is also crucial and very important, because the application where this model should work in are also crucial for the understanding and for having a successful product and model at the end. And yeah, so experimental phase with proof of concept is ending. This is something that also one can read in the reports, for example, by Deloitte that I will mention later today. Yeah, the companies are starting to really deploy. So this is one thing. This phase is ending, and another phase of deployment is starting, or is there. So what I read in the report is that, yeah, machine learning and data science is already mainstream. So everybody is kind of using it, and everybody is using AI and the data that are having in order to yeah, improve their processes and maybe automate things, or maybe make new projects and solve new problems, so to say. Whatever is the solution or whatever is the goal, the solution very often today is the data science. And we see this quite a lot. And this is a good thing, because that last part about not being realistic on what's the job role is ending, because I think, of course, working on deployment and working on models which are actually used and where you see the results is a bit more challenging and interesting than just playing with data and throwing it in the trash, so to say. And so let's say, where is the AI Guild in all of this? Actually, everywhere, one could say. So we are here to support you and to support each other, better said, throughout the journey from the beginning of your thinking. Maybe somebody of you is still thinking whether you should start your career in data science or not, whether you should change from academia maybe to industry, or whether you should change your career. And then, of course, the first step in changing the career path is having a good CV in order to get you where you want to be. That's why we have webinars and programs for validating CV, then the competency profile, really step by step how you can reach where you are aiming in the data science role. And finally, for everyone who already has the expertise and is offering, so to say, knowledge and sharing the knowledge and being an expert, from on one hand from the side of data science, and the other hand from a specific domain, we offer the accreditation program, about which we will also speak later at the end. So this is just an overview, and this is very specifically how you can become part of the journey and how you can become part. So first of all, if you are not an AI Guild member, please feel free to explore the AI Guild website and apply to become a member. This is free of charge. And then also you will be able to participate in the variety of programs that the AI Guild is offering. First of all, we have the various webinars as the one today, then again also about the CV and about the competencies and skills profile, and then for the senior level, also the accreditation process. And on the other hand, it's not just a webinar for you as a listener, but you can also become a guest and join us today as we are doing it today. And also you can participate in the career development program, or host an event yourself, or maybe become an accredited expert as I did in the first round. So yeah, there are a variety of options, and there is much more. There is a Slack channel, and there are monthly meetups. So yeah, feel free to explore this if you haven't done until now. And yeah, now I hand over to Dania, I think.
Yes, thank you, Irena, for the introduction. And yeah, I wrote on the chat the website for the AI Guild. If you are interested in becoming a member, please go there to apply. As Irena said, the membership is for free, and the more the better. So I'm going to start now talking about the different roles. So here I have brought this picture, quite colorful. It is based on something that was published in this paper called The Hidden Technical Debt in Machine Learning Systems. So the idea is that here we have a bunch of pieces that are part of, let's say, the puzzle of productionizing machine learning. Like it was mentioned by Irena in the beginning, now the focus is changing from proof of concept to deploying. And that means that you have a lot more aspects to think about. For example, here I have in blue the data collection, data quality, and data pre-processing pieces. And I matched them in blue with the role of the data engineer. And then in yellow, we have the analysis, business logic, and A/B testing, which are in yellow with matched with the data analyst. Then we have in red, maybe the data scientists pieces, which are the feature extraction, parameter configuration, and offline validation. And then in gray, the last one, oh, no, one before the last one, in gray, the machine learning engineer, who is taking care of the overall infrastructure where we have everything running, anything about the configuration, monitoring, the management of the resources and the tools. And then the last, the AI researcher, which here is in green, in this box here about the machine learning models. So this is more like an overview, and the idea is that all the roles that are here defined in reality is not exactly how it happens. So this is maybe a disclaimer, but this is the overall idea, or let's say the core responsibilities for each of those roles. It can change depending on the size of the team. It can also have more roles than that or less roles than that, but that is the starting point for our conversation. Also to notice that the machine learning models here is in green. So it is about the AI researcher, because the idea here is the implementation of a new machine learning model. Using the model to train with some data of the company or the organization, then it would be also for the data scientists. So on this next slide, yes, I have here again the same titles with the same color code and the specific tasks and skills required. So just as I was mentioning, the AI researcher in the middle, the main task is about building new machine learning algorithms and finding custom scientific solutions. The skills for that role are about research, presenting at conferences, and writing publications. That is different if we look or comparing directly with the data scientist in red. Here, the task is about understanding the business case, building features that can make it possible to train a model that address those business use cases. And here the skills are statistics, SQL, some programming language like Python or R, machine learning and deep learning techniques. If we look in the one below, the machine learning engineer in gray, we have here the tasks are about optimizing, deploying, and maintaining the machine learning models in production. And for that, you have to have skills like software engineering, DevOps, and systems architecture. And now we go back to the data engineer here in blue. The data engineer main task, I describe it as to build and maintain infrastructure and pipeline to collect, clean, and pre-process the data. And the skills are distributed systems, databases, and software engineering. Software engineering again. And the last one is the data analyst in yellow. Here, the main task is understanding business and data to be able to report. And the skills are descriptive analytics, SQL, statistics, dashboarding, and visualization tools. So this is the first glimpse of the different roles that can be found in a data team. And as I am repeating, data science is a team sport. So we talked about 5 roles. So the data engineer, data analyst, the data scientist, machine learning engineer, and the AI researcher. But we also have more tech expert roles. For example, NLP engineer, or the computer vision engineer, or the DevOps engineer, DevOps or MLOps. There's also the product and business roles. So we have the product owner, we can have the domain expert, and maybe even others or new roles that will come up. The message here of this slide is that all the skill sets they need to exist and collaborate to be able to have this end-to-end machine learning working, like in the first picture when I showed. The idea is that each one will complement each other's expertise, and understanding the full picture it's a lot, no? So that's why there is no like unicorn, like we say. It's hard to find one single person that has all the skills, and that's why we see this trend in the market of the specializing roles and being part of the team working together between data scientists, analysts, and engineers to have machine learning in production. If you have any questions, feel free, right? I'm talking a lot. So now a bit more details about the skill set for each of the data roles. Before I talk about each of them, I would like to introduce you to this idea of the T-shaped skill set, which is about the broad expertise that you can have in different areas, and then the deep expertise that you will have in one or specifically one area. So that's why you have the T. And then if we start, for example, with the data engineer, this person would have some expertise in programming, machine learning, but mostly in software engineering. Okay, we have one question. I will get it from Elena. Thank you. I heard a company stating that there is a gradation in the data roles. Data analyst being less experienced or requiring less education than the data scientist. Hence, also a different paycheck. Any experience on that? Andrew, Irena, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can comment shortly, and then maybe Andrew can add his view. I think here, I think it's not fair to say less experience or less education. I think maybe different will be the correct word. I think it is different. This is true, because as Dania said also in the slide before, the data analyst is doing predictive analytics, very so to say, shortly speaking, you can say the data analyst is doing descriptive analytics and the data scientist is doing predictive analytics. So just from the question, yeah, what is the temperature today and what will be the temperature tomorrow? It's much, of course, it's easier, right, to say what's the temperature today and what's the temperature tomorrow. It's a harder question, and that question definitely requires more skills, or it requires different set of skills. So yeah, I think in some sense it is true. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that one is better, so to say, than the other. I think it was exactly in one of the other webinars where I attended, there was a girl coming from academia, so with a lot of education, and that's why this question about less education, I don't think it is fair. There was a person with a really highest education possible and with deep knowledge, and she wanted to do an analyst role because she found visualization and reporting and creating dashboards very appealing and interesting. And this is okay, this is fine. And of course, on the other hand, to be a successful data scientist, one has to understand more the mathematical models maybe behind the things, and to think more and to make sure that the models he's using are used correctly and so on. So there is much more there, and therefore I think it is true that most likely there will be a difference also on the salary side. Andrew, what's your view on this?
Yeah, I guess I have to come from the data analyst corner a little bit, and I definitely see there's a difference and a divide. And I think up to now, you probably do have this gradation that, data analyst or people going into the data world think, oh, I want to be a data scientist, I want to predict things, and okay, the data analyst is a stepping stone to this. But yeah, I think as we've seen here, the skills that you need probably are quite different, actually, and or maybe as you grow as a data analyst, the skills needed are less mathematical, but more, let's say, domain focused. and understanding what the right thing or the best thing to do is. So I mean, I think there's a book, Prediction Machines, which really talks about how decisions are made, and that you really put prediction and judgment together to decide what the best thing to do is. So I think the data scientist can specialize on predicting something, but the analyst figures out what is the thing that we need to predict, and based on that prediction, what should we do to maximize our business outcome? And so I guess because getting business experience and domain knowledge is sort of lower barriers to entry than you know, a data science role where you need to have really deep math skills. Maybe it's easier to get into a data analyst role. But I think as you progress, the value to a company might actually be more for the analytical role, where you're interacting with management, making decisions, and guiding the data scientist to what models they should, well, not what models, but what compromises are acceptable, and which type of errors are better than, you know, can we accept as opposed to others. So yeah, they work together. There's a lot of hand in hand, but there is scope for both to progress up to, let's say, high paycheck areas.
Yes, thank you for that both. I really see this, what you were saying, Andrew, that in the beginning, maybe it's low barrier for the data analyst, since most of the time you start working for a company, you will then, by working there, you will have a better understanding of the business and how things work, like how the company makes money and how the decisions are being made in the company. And once you understand that, together with the data understanding, and of course, a lot of communication skills, you start to support really the decision making. And that part might be that you then need to go to a data scientist and get support from a predictive model, but it's not always the case. There's a lot that can be done also. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I think now it's a good link for you.
Oh. Sorry, we just have one more question. Dania, maybe we can answer that one. I think maybe it's a good question also for Andrew. So it says, is it necessary to have a math or economics or computer science background in order to work in data, even as a data analyst? Or can a person coming from marketing or business background break into the field? Yeah, maybe Andrew, do you want to comment on this? Because I think you have seen most variety of students.
Yeah. This was kind of my first slide about my background in economics, yeah, we can go here. So yeah, I started way back in the day studying economics, and this has a big math component, you know, calculus and econometrics and let's say regression modeling, linear algebra, all these sorts of deep math things. To tell you the truth, I didn't start using the math deeply. I would say I didn't use linear programming. Oh no, sorry, linear algebra until, you know, I really went into doing data science stuff quite recently, and then sort of doing predictive models. I think math is very important. Descriptive statistics for analyst roles. I think it's not mandatory. I think it's probably something you need to learn, and you can learn it anywhere, but you have to learn. Like, I don't think you can go into data without, well, you can't excel in data without knowing math, but that doesn't mean you have to learn it in school. You know, you can come from a marketing background, from a business background. I guess to Dania, if I just jump in now and kick off, because this is a good starting point. So yeah, right now I'm the head coach at the bootcamp teaching data analytics. I've, as you can see from the years that this started last century, you know, I've been around for a while, I guess, looking at this. But it definitely was not a direct path that I took. and what I'm doing now is teaching my students what I learned, I guess, and also what I look for in people when I'm looking to hire in data analyst roles. So I was at FreeNow, which for the people not in Europe is, let's say, I don't like to say it, but a little bit like Uber, in that it's a ride-hailing company, but we also do scooters and car sharing and all sorts of stuff. And yeah. And over the 5 years, I started as the first person in the data department. Yeah, and yeah, it's even, well, yeah, so I'm kind of working backwards here. In the business intelligence, as the first person making charts, defining business logic, doing all of this stuff, and then built up the teams and the infrastructure, and eventually sort of as head of analytics had a team of 17 people, like analysts, and there were also data engineers and data scientists. Yeah, so this is kind of where I got to, and in the role of head of analytics, I hired a lot of analysts, and I learned a lot about picking what skills people needed, and so this is what I'm applying to being the head coach. But to go back, maybe you go back one slide, to go back then, now that you know where I got to. Yeah, so I started studying economics, and I guess the value of that education for me was it was then the framework which I used to analyze the world. Like economics is, I think, a very good analytical tool, sort of these concept of supply and demand and microeconomics. You can kind of look at any business problem and break it down into component parts and then start to solve the problem that way. And I think this is what problem solving is, and analytics need is taking a big problem and breaking it down to small problems. I think if you study physics, like Elon Musk, I think is a physicist, and he always talks about first principles and solving problems. Everything is a physics problem when you look at it from that angle. Or I guess if you study psychology, you can use this as a lens upon which to put order into the world. And I think as an analyst, it's about taking the chaos of the business or whatever you're in and trying to create some order. So this is what economics did for me. It also gave me this math, which was really nice. So I have to say, I didn't end up building regression models that I learned how to do in, let's say, 1999 until like 10, 15 years later. But it was there, and, it kind of all comes back up. But it definitely, my journey into the world of data did not require a hard science background. It was mainly let's say the soft skills and the domain knowledge that I built for a long time. So kind of have on this slide, even when I was studying, I did economic history, so kind of this storytelling idea, plus econometrics, which is the hard math side and the technical side. And then going into my first job, well, let's say even at university, I figured out that I wanted to work in transport. I did an internship at the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C., and worked on ship financing and oil tankers and things. Tried to persuade the US government not to invest in oil tankers, but as an intern, I didn't have so much power. But the other thing I'd worked on, I had another internship which was on ubiquitous computing and what would happen. Back in 2002, people were asking what would happen when everybody had a connected internet device in their pocket. And we kind of worked on a project that was very similar to Google Maps, like 5 years before the iPhone was invented. So it was an exciting time, and you kind of get that view into technology. So then jumping into my first job, it's like, of course, I was like, I want to look at international trade and predict things and use regression and blah, blah, blah. But actually, I got a job as a customer service agent at a shipping company. It's like the lowest role in the entire business, I think. And in 2003, I was literally, couriers would come into the office with pieces of paper that said, and a check to pay for the container, and I would take that piece of paper and then give them another piece of paper that they would take down to the wharf and give to the the terminal operator, and then they would get the container and be able to take it. And it's like the most manual, paper, least digitized process you could imagine. But slowly, I got involved in all of the digitization projects that were going on. So e-commerce was just being launched. You know, my first job was really convincing people to use the website to track their containers instead of sending us a fax. So it's kind of like really old school, I guess, but I wanted to get into this industry, so I started at the beginning and then slowly worked my way up, got into more and more digitization projects, and by the end was like rolling out e-commerce to our customers across the country. So that was kind of cool, and I got to go to a few different countries and do fun stuff. So it kind of was ticking the boxes. And then the GFC came along. So in 2008, this global financial crisis, and then it kind of closed the door on a few things, and I went back to university. So this is when the next slide starts. Kind of the second half of the career, going back and doing a degree in logistics and supply chain management. So again, like not super technical. It wasn't informatics or whatever, but it definitely had a component of modeling and using, let's say, building models, doing the math to make decisions around logistics and supply chain. So there was kind of a mix between the soft skills and the hard skills again. And I guess that's where I got my sort of first introduction into programming and let's say model building, doing logistic regression, things like this. But again, it wasn't really, after that, I didn't go into data science at that point. I went again into consulting and working with customers and sales and all sorts of stuff like that. And it was really only until I joined my taxi or FreeNow, as it was in 2014, where I got into let's say the deep into data. So it was a tech company, software company, and up to then, everything had been Excel and building Excel models, copy pasting data, macros were probably the most technical thing we were doing. But then it was really nice to be exposed to this world where everybody around you was a software programmer, software engineers, and the expectation was that things would be automated. And and we had like a AWS account, and it's just like, okay, you need some more power. Okay, yeah, here you go. Here's another, whatever. We'll increase the power on this node, and we'll do all this sort of stuff. But yeah, my job was to turn the company from being a let's say gut feel driven company into a data driven company. And the beginning as a real software company and very technical, but all the decisions were made by like getting everybody in the room and saying, hey, what should we do? And kind of battling it out. And everybody would come with different numbers. So like the first thing was, it's kind of this classic descriptive analytics, predictive, blah, 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 this kind of growth thing that you see. And we really had to set the base and just say, this is what our numbers mean. This is the business logic. A new customer is defined by this, and our revenue is based on this, and all of these kind of basic things, but just to set that standard that everybody could then use the data to make decisions. And this is also like the analyst is building the foundation for everyone else. And, of course, the goal, like we had in our mind, we want to do AI, we want to predict things, and there's lots of things we could do. But first, we have to get our data business logic in place and the data infrastructure. So the job was like for me to get the business logic in place, figure out what was important to measure, and to work with the data engineers to build the infrastructure. And so I was like data analyst plus product owner for data engineering, and sort of set the scene for building the models. And then again, like, so I was not a data engineer, I'm not a software engineer, but I was playing the role in between the technical people and the business people. So the engineers could say, yeah, we can build this solution or this solution. These are the drawbacks of this, and these are the drawbacks of this. Which one should we do? And then I would have to apply, say, okay, well, the business is focused on this, and it's more important that we give a good service to our new customers than to our drivers or whatever. So therefore, we should make this decision, and we should make these compromises for the future. and then they would do it, and then I had 5 engineers carrying out my plans for building infrastructure. So although I didn't code any of it, I feel like I had quite a lot of say in what it was we did as a company. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Andrew. It's just that I think this is very relevant to the question we have from Juanita. Thanks for the question. She is mentioning that she sees a new role popping up, the analytics engineer. And she's asking if it's similar to the machine learning engineer. So from what I have seen from the analytics engineer, it's more similar to the data engineer, if you like. This is what I understand. Do you know this role?
I have read a couple things about it now, and I really like this role as it's defined because it solves one of the friction points that I had at FreeNow. And this was the battle between, the battle between data engineering and data analytics and who does what. And, when we were small and I was, like there were 5 of us, it was easy to solve these things. But when you have big teams and you have 20 analysts and 20 data engineers, and the engineers want to build infrastructure and build automated things and do all this technical stuff, and the analysts want to have the data they want and not worry about the plumbing or the cleaning or anything. They just want to have the data. And then there's this gap in the middle of like, okay, who figures out what implements the business logic and does the cleaning and does quality checking. And when the analyst says, I'd really like to have a new table, or there's a new data source that we need. And the analyst would look over at the engineer and say, hey, you set that up. And the engineer says, no, that's not my job. I'm doing this other technical stuff. That's for you to do. And there's kind of this friction of who does that. And yeah, this analytics engineer fits perfectly in the middle to solve that, to have a foot in both camps. And it's a little bit, I think, of there used to be a BI developer role who kind of built tables and prepared things so that the analyst could build a dashboard on top. And of course, now the business user can create the dashboard themselves. So now it's sort of the analyst is pushed more into this technical role of being able to set up DAGs in Airflow, for example. So yeah, I think this is a cool role. It's somewhere else in the pyramid. I guess if you go to the next slide, this is my kind of, I don't have a T-shaped, this is kind of a triangle, you could imagine, that at the top you have business understanding, and this is where the analyst lives. And here in the corner with data wrangling, this is, let's say, the data engineer, and then math and stats is the data scientist. And then everybody needs to be able to talk and project manage themselves. But I think between business understanding and data wrangling lies the analytics engineer. And between math and stats, between the data scientist and data engineer sits the ML engineer. Maybe I think that's kind of a little bit, you can look at it like that. And what sits between the business understanding math and stats? Yeah, I guess that's also, and like analysts and data scientists kind of, as a data scientist, if you understand the business, you're much more valuable than if you have no idea. Although I talked to one data scientist, worked at a tech company, and he really couldn't care less about what business he was in or what the topic was. Really just wanted to build models of whatever data and get good R scores or whatever, R squared or whatever. You could change this, be it music industry or food delivery or whatever. He didn't care. It's like, I just want to make models and do math. So there are people who only want to live in one corner, but I think that the more you can do of these 3 skills, I think, of course, the closer to being the unicorn you are.
Yeah, and I think also we have observed in the market, like the introduction from Irena, that there is a rising value of the domain expertise. That is, for example, if you're working in transportation, that you understand it, or if you're working in marketing, that you understand what the marketing is doing, because that's when you can do more than just have a good or accurate, good performance model, but you can also contribute to defining what is a good model, or you understand what is the data that you need to help that model improve, for example. So it allows you to be somehow creative as well.
And I mean, just to kind of play that analyst versus data scientist thing, is that I think the amount of building models and tweaking things and finding the exactly right parameter is sort of like this much compared to everything else. Getting the data pipeline in order, talking to the stakeholders, what is it really that we need to do? The business user will come to you and say, yeah, you need to predict the weather tomorrow. And you say, okay, yeah, then here's the perfect prediction for the weather. And they'll be like, yeah, that doesn't help me at all. Actually, I just want to know, if I should put the top up on my convertible or not, and it's like, well, yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that's a good example, but making sure you're predicting the right thing is just as important as that the model is correct, I think.
Yes, Irena, do you have a comment on this?
No, actually, I just wanted to read the next question.
Yes.
I don't have a comment, but I mean, today is the first time that I read this role, analytics engineer, and what I read, so I just Googled to see what Google tells me, and to my understanding, this was similar to BI engineer. I mean, I know BI engineer, so yeah, I think because the question if it's similar to machine learning engineer, I would say no, but it's more similar to BI engineer. And yeah, so, but then again, one always has to also read the full description in order to be able to judge. But yeah, let's maybe read the next question, because this is again the topics that we had in the last minutes, looking at two extremes, being a jack of all trades, master of none, versus an expert in one field. Example, data scientist or machine learning engineer. What is more attractive for companies? So here I want to say that between being an expert and being a generalist, let's call it, we have to have in mind that there are two aspects. So one is being an expert in a particular domain, in a particular industry, let's say, as on one hand, and the other one is being an expert or being a generalist from a technical perspective. So let's say being able to do reporting and modeling and data cleaning, and so being all the like engineer and analyst and scientist, or knowing only one thing. So from a technical perspective, and then from a domain perspective. And yeah, what is more attractive for companies? I think, so maybe I can answer because I started speaking, and then you can share your experience. I think that here, I would say the answer is that it depends on the company. I think that the big companies, or maybe not say big, but those who largely use data and are data driven, maybe the company itself is small, but it's data driven, those companies, I think, will prefer more to have single, so to say, experts for the particular domain and for a particular task, because they have the, so to say, the freedom to have more people, and then to have for each of the roles to have a specific person who will then know exactly what they're doing in that particular task. On the other hand, companies who are just starting somehow to work with the data in details, and who are not data driven but are more gut driven, I think is the term from Andrew. I think those companies would maybe more appreciate one person who knows a bit of everything and who can just start doing things, and then the knowledge that he will have a bit from everything will be sufficient to get the thing started. Yeah, maybe this is the first answer that came to my mind.
Yeah, I think I agree with your perspective, Irena, is that it really depends on the company, or let's say the company stage, how mature the data team is in the company. Because also if it's a company that is starting to work with data, there is this evolution. I think, Andrew, you mentioned briefly this evolution of the data science in a company, and it really has to start with understanding the data and understanding the business logic that can be applied from the data. You know? So if you don't have that, there's no way that you can predict something, because you don't even understand what is it that you want to predict. And let's say if you decide to become an expert, I don't know, for example, in computer vision, then that's pretty defined. You are going to work with images like photos or video images. And then a company that is only in the beginning stages of understanding their data and how to apply the business logic to their data, they have no use for an expert like this. Also, maybe in a small team where you have maybe 2, 3, 4 people, still there is not enough overlap that you can become a specialist, because let's say if you go on vacation or if you get sick, someone else needs to be able to continue the work for you. But that's very different if your company is, on the other hand, in a very much mature stage of the data organization, in which you have teams with, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 people, or in which the company is already doing the predictive modeling and is working already with different types of different applications, different use cases, different types of data. Then it might be that they reach a level where they have people that are specialized in specific problems or types of data. One example is Zalando. How many data scientists there are in Zalando, right? So you have very specific roles. Maybe you want to say something about your role, for example, Irina.
Yeah, so I mean, it's true. I hardly even say how many data scientists in Zalando I know. There is no, first of all, there is no single data science team or department, but for every specific one small domain of expertise in Zalando, there is a data science team sitting inside, and then there are teams of data engineers again. So, for example, I am in the marketing and analytics, and then on the other hand, then every few years, Zalando is having a reorganization of the whole structure, and then it's. But I can speak about what was until now. So I was in the marketing and analytics department. So the data analysts and data scientists and engineers sitting in my department were specifically interested in the marketing activities of Zalando. And this is then, again, on one hand, specific domain, marketing, and on the other hand, there is a division who is doing the engineering work, who is doing the analytical work, reporting work, and who is doing the machine learning. So we had a split in both directions, and this is very detailed. And then it's a completely different team, for example, who is doing prediction of what size fits you the best, right? Like we do have our own networking and internal conferences and a variety of possibilities for interaction, but this is separated. And yeah, and then there is a different team who is doing prediction, let's say, on the demand or on the supply side, or many things, and not to mention the app, and not to mention all the processes like logistics and things like this. So it's endless.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I think that's why also we see there is a lot of need for specialized roles, because as the field evolves, and it is still pretty young, but as the field itself of data science evolves, then companies are also evolving in the maturity of the data organization, and then you'll see more opportunities to tackle specific problems or specific challenges with specific knowledge. That's why I think, like, when people say if the data scientist role will disappear, I'm like, there's so many things that you can do. I can't believe that it's going to disappear, you know? Maybe the tasks change or they become more specialized, but there's so much to do.
Andrew, maybe you want to add something?
Yeah, I guess I can only agree with everything. And also, as you say, Irina, that it probably differs within a company too. I guess it's all about the maturity level of the company and the team. So in my experience, when you're hiring somebody, you're either looking to strengthen what you have already. So I want to have another person that's just like this person. I just want double. I want your twin. So then that's probably a specialist you're looking for, or you're trying to find somebody to fill a gap that you don't know, that you don't have yet. And that's probably where you trying to find more of a generalist. Like, okay, we want to start doing marketing intelligence. So, but we don't even have our data yet. We don't have any reporting. So we need somebody who can connect to the APIs of our providers, get the data, do the basic data engineering skills, then build the analysis on top and do some dashboarding and do it all, right? So if companies are kind of starting from scratch, they'll usually look for somebody with more skills, like a wider range of skills. Then the danger is that as the company sort of matures, then they'll need somebody they'll want to specialize, and then that, well, I know danger, but then that's the opportunity to go from a broad skill to focus on the T, right? And choose, okay, well, my team is growing. Let's hire somebody to do then the analytics, and then I can focus on just the data pipelines, or vice versa.
Okay. We have one more question from Christine. What is the difference between a research engineer and a research scientist in this field? Maybe I can start again since I read it. So I must say I'm not an expert, and I think since these two roles are both not that, or maybe they are just less common, I think it will depend on the particular description. But from my understanding, this would be both roles where a lot of, so when you say research, then it's about novelty, it's about like coming up with new solutions and maybe targeted solution, because then again, we are speaking about industry roles. So that means that these are specific new solutions which are targeted for the particular usage of the company. And then I would expect that the research scientist is the one who is responsible for the theory of those new models. Maybe he's the one who is writing papers, because I mean, in general, I think many of the, even of the machine learning models used nowadays are based on papers by Google, let's say, or Facebook and so on. And then the people who are writing the theory would be the research scientists, and the people who are maybe writing the packages, because then again, there will be like free, usually open source packages where these particular models are then explained and can be used and put into production or integrated in another bigger project within another company. Then those would be the research engineers. So yeah, I think this is the difference.
Yeah, I am not familiar also with the specific roles, but I would interpret them the same as you. Maybe the research engineer is the one that is doing the coding, and the research scientist is doing the paper.
Yeah, sure. I think yes, especially if the PhD graduate doesn't have a software engineering background. I think then it would be hard to get a research engineer. But it's a question, PhD in what, right? Because there are people who are PhD in computer science. Then, of course, a research engineer would be also a suitable position. But if it's a PhD, let's say in statistics, or PhD in econometrics, or PhD in machine learning directly, so to say, or maybe somehow indirectly, yeah. So if it's related, then definitely a research scientist would be the best fit. Sure, welcome. Dania, do you want to read the next question?
Okay, so can you talk about the minimum skills required to grab a job in data science, data engineering, or data analytics for a fresh graduate in master's? Well, maybe I can share the specific T-shaped skills. Can you see the one for the data scientists? Yeah. Yes. Okay, so the idea here is that for the data scientists, we have the majority of the skills or the focus really on the machine learning algorithms and statistics. So I put here some examples like understanding how to work with pandas, scikit-learn, numpy, keras, just some of the examples of Python libraries. And also understanding the theory of probability distributions, regression, classification, maybe deep learning. No? So not all of those, but those are examples to make it more concrete what I mean with machine learning algorithms and statistics. And then important to have the understanding of the tools and how to code. So that could be R or Python. And the most used tools are, for example, Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Notebooks, and Git. And then a bit less important, but also there is the visualization and communication skills. So that is about having a logical approach to solve the problem and to know how to interpret the data. Most likely you will do some like descriptive analysis, exploratory analysis before you do the modeling. And also, of course, after you model, you have to interpret the results. The domain expertise is also something important, but as we mentioned, from entry level, that might not be expected. So maybe you have already studied something in your master's that is linked to a specific industry. Like, for example, Andrew was already studying supply chain and logistics in his master, so he brought that domain expertise. But it's not, I would say it's not required. A lot of the times you'll start working for the company and that will be something you'll learn in the first month. If I compare, for example, with the, I don't know if I can, yeah, the data engineer, here we have two focuses, of course, on the programming side and on the tools. But here then not only R or Python, but also understanding Bash scripting, maybe Scala or Java, and having the understanding of tools for big data, for example, Hadoop, understanding how to work with databases and how to work with, again, the code, Git, and how to work with the job scheduling, for example, Airflow or Jenkins. And then something that was not very important for the data scientist, but would be more important in the data engineering role, is the last block of skills in software engineering and platforms. So, for example, understanding how to build data pipelines, how the data structures work, and knowing how to work comfortably in Linux or in some cloud platform like AWS, Google, or Azure. So the last one maybe is the data analyst. I don't have data analyst. Wait. I do have it. So the data analyst, we talk again about the domain expertise and some understanding of a programming language. For example, SQL, I would say is the most important one because you have to get the data. And maybe you also know some R and Python that helps building some visualizations, but not really necessary. The most important one, or the deepest part on the T, is about the visualization and communication skills. And here we can work with tools like Excel or Tableau or Power BI. And again, having the understanding of having the logical approach and the data interpretation skills to be able to connect with the business questions or to be able to support decision making with that data or that dashboard. And on the part of machine learning and statistics, it's most important to understand like the descriptive statistics, and there's a bit of theory like hypothesis testing if you're working with A/B testing, what are the probability distributions, and if you have the chance also working with some regression or classification models. So I would say those are the minimal skills specifically for data analyst and data scientist. I would say it's very important to brush your statistics skills and to understand the basics of SQL. Maybe even understand a bit of Python or R can be helpful, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. A lot of the companies also work with tools that support you without needing to code, like Tableau, for example. What is your experience, Andrew? Since you work on the field.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is a good mix. And yeah, SQL is like mandatory almost, although it's hard to get good SQL practice without being in a live environment, I find. I guess there's online tutorials and things, but unlike like Python, you can write your own programs and do programming just on your local machine. But SQL, you're doing database calls. I can say that in my bootcamp, we have a nice SQL session where we've simulated it. But it is one of those things it's tough to learn before you have access to one. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg.
Yeah, I can also report because when I was teaching at the bootcamp, my class was the SQL. And yeah, I was running like a small database on my computer that the people could access to get the data and run some queries, because that's the best way to practice, really. But you have to have some database.
It's one of these things. What are the minimum skills you need? And it's tough. Domain experience domain expertise comes through experience. As I said, SQL comes through working with it. So then what's left, and maybe it's some things that are not on here. I think when looking for juniors, people really want to have, it's that motivation and willingness to learn, proven learning ability, good, let's say project management or like self-discipline, or like that. I guess one of the things I would always ask would be like, explain a project that you worked on and were somehow, had some power over, and how did it work? How did you make something happen? Ultimately, when you hire someone, you want somebody who can get stuff done. And if you have a story about how you, did anything, like, here was a project and I had to make decisions and I had to make things done, and there were problems. And of course, it didn't work out exactly how I wanted, but in the end, we did something. So that's a nice story. And that kind of shows that you are determined and willing to learn. So I think that's always a good thing as somebody coming with less experience.
We have one more question that I would like to read. Is having a teaching role in a learning institution, not a university, as a first role beneficial for the CV in the long run? I would like to know what could be the impact later on when looking for a job in a company, since one wouldn't be working with real world and get your hands dirty projects. So yeah, I think maybe, I would be interested also to know what Andrew thinks about this. From my opinion, certainly yes. I think why not? I think any start is a good start. I think once it's out of academia, it's already a good start, and the way to the, so to say, dream role in the industry can also be like this. And I think we saw this also. Andrew started like this, and for me also, somebody also asked a question. Okay, I have a PhD, and should I look for a research scientist role? Surely that's like somehow the best thing to do, just to continue work in research, but it's not always possible, and maybe it is quite difficult, and maybe not everyone is that lucky or smart, or I don't know. For me, for example, in my case, I did my PhD in applied math, and I was very close to doing machine learning. So I was doing like regularization with lasso and whatever, image processing and signal processing. So it was almost one-on-one, but I didn't succeed in getting that exciting role. But I started as a business analyst, so really doing reporting with Excel and the macros that Andrew mentioned. So this is how I started, and I don't regret, because it opened me new doors and new perspectives. It gave me opportunity to also get to know the business. So I was working in the airline industry, so the domain expertise was really exciting. So I think that as long as one is confident about what he is doing and what are the skill set that you will at the end gain, it's a good thing. And I think to teach is a very good thing. So in my PhD, for example, I was not teaching, and I saw that as a disadvantage, because it brings you, and maybe Andrew can speak. Yeah, if you are teaching, that will bring you a lot of good, so to say, a good skill set. And also at Zalando, for example, is very valid. So we have our own internal teaching platform, so to say, and it's always very welcome when someone is willing to volunteer and to give courses there internally. So if somebody wants to learn something, you can do it internally, and there is always demand for people who are willing to teach, and it's always less than people who are willing to learn. And if somebody like you, for example, would come and say, okay, I can teach and I can also learn the other stuff, but I'm also willing to teach and I like this, it's definitely a plus. Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess I can only say from my other perspective, now that I've started to teach after quite a long time, I find it very rewarding. And one of the reasons that I decided to go into it was that it's a whole new skill set that is very valuable in general. Being able to get in front of people and explain things clearly is a great skill. And of course, depends what the job is, whether it's something that will later be valuable. But I find teaching all of these topics is a way for me to learn them. You know, there's topics I'm teaching that I was not really skilled at, and it's quite exciting that I can learn like the day before I'm teaching it. I'm, you know, trying to figure it out, and then as you explain it, you learn more. So I think it's also can be seen by employers as a good skill to have. That you can communicate, right? This is one of my 5 key skills. There was communication. So it's probably not a bad thing.
Dania, do you want to add something? Oh, I think
you have said it all.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree completely that, I mean, the thing about teaching is that some people say that you only know something really well when you can teach someone that thing, right? So yeah, that's one of the best ways to learn, but also learning the communication skills themselves. And I think you also learn yourself, you learn how to learn so that you can teach others. So that's also a skill that we need working in tech. We always need to be learning new things. There's always a new library or a new algorithm that is being published that you need to learn. So, yeah. Okay, if you have more questions, you can still type them. We have another 10 minutes or so. Otherwise, we go back to the slides, and now we talk about the orientation of the labor market with Irena.
Yeah, thank you, Dania. So, yeah, we are ready to share some insights with you regarding where the world is heading regarding AI and data science. And I think we already mentioned few aspects. So in general, I think you are all interested, like, okay, if I want to start in industry, or if I'm already in the industry, but I want to change, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And which role is doing what actually at the end? And the thing is that, yeah, things are changing, and definitely one interesting question is where, in which area. So again, we come to the domain expertise. What are you also willing to work with? Yeah, as Andrew said, for some people it doesn't matter as long as you are doing the math, and then you can skip this slide. But if you are interested in what exactly your model will be used for, you can look at this and then see that the companies which are highly investing in AI and data science and roles in data are technology, media, entertainment, telecommunication, then the industrial products and services. So these are companies which are not only investing, but also having a return on invest. It means that it pays off to invest in AI for these industries. And then for the life sciences and healthcare, there is a lot of investment, but maybe the return is not that obvious, at least not yet, maybe. And then here, maybe the last left corner is the government and the public sector, where we see no investment and no return. It is definitely true, especially for Germany. But I really hope that at least with the pandemic, things will start improving here. And
yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say, that this is from 2018 or published in 2018, which means that it was surveyed probably 1 year before. I don't know if they have some updated survey, because I would be interested to see, especially in the life sciences and healthcare, I believe there has been more returns for now by now.
Yeah.
But I think that people can look at this in a way, well, if you don't have a preferred industry yet, this might help you, because we would expect that the ones that have more opportunities are the ones that are in dark green, and in light green, the ones that have less opportunities.
Yeah, that's true. And just to mention, there is an update. So actually, the next 3 slides are from the new report from Deloitte. So you can also find the PDFs. There is in English and in German. So this is state of the art in the enterprise. So there is a new edition from 2020. Exactly. But before we go to that one, maybe we can answer the new question that just came out. I just got a job as a graduate data engineer, but I don't have any past experience or background in IT or any related subject. What's your advice for me? What's the most effective approach to learn and develop my knowledge? Maybe it's a good thing to know, if it's not this, then what is your background? Because it's hard to say, because you say in IT or any related subject. So then I wonder, what did you study? I mean, if you study literature, let's say, then my answer will be 1. If you studied anything STEAM related, then it will be another answer. But I think here and in general, I think the best advice is, like, if you got a job, if you already got the job, it means that it was estimated that most likely you can do the job. And this is already good. Environmental science and renewable energy. Okay, so I think, maybe Andrew can add something on this, but I think as long as you got the job and it's a graduate program, so I think usually then you have like 2 years where you kind of study and work. Is it like this? If it's like this, then I think the best, so this is great. I think these programs are really nice, and you will learn there, and depending on when you start, if you are interested, you can already just do some basic courses, like from YouTube, or I don't know, or from Coursera, depending on data engineer. So I would say Microsoft Azure, and I think you definitely need maybe SQL, and I would start with, maybe not to overwhelm you, I would start with SQL and then Microsoft Azure, and you can just learn a bit to inspire yourself. But I think usually those programs are really well structured, so you won't get lost there. As long as you are keen on learning, you have a specific program that you just have to follow, and it will be all good. And I think it's the best part in general to be in this field, is that you can learn everything. And this is also one of the questions that I got asked in my first interview, is like, what would you do if you don't know? And I think it was specifically about SQL, and I said I will just learn it. And for the things that we needed, so I didn't have to create tables, or we had a data warehouse people responsible for this, but to be able to see one query and to write maybe a similar one or to modify it to get a different answer, this you can learn very fast, really in a few weeks. And then with time, you can just advance your learnings.
Yeah, I think one of the best cases or one of the best scenarios is when you have the job, because you will learn a lot by doing.
Yeah.
That will basically steer what you have to learn, like the tasks you have to do for the job or the tasks that are proposed to you on the job. They will help you to learn because you will have to do them. So you'll find out the way. Would you like to add something, Andrew?
Congratulations. I mean, this is the,
Yes.
the great
Exactly.
situation. I know nothing and they gave me the job. What do I do? Although I think it was Bill Gates, or people always say it's Bill Gates. Like whenever they ask you in a job interview, can you do this? Just say yes, and then figure it out once you have the job. So it's a good place. But you know, I don't know. I like reading Medium for tech articles, just to like some specific things. People in Medium seems to be the place now where people talk about new technologies and use cases, and you can follow it and kind of learn what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we have only a few minutes left. So I mean, we won't have too much time to go through the details of the next slides, but as Dania was already mentioned, you will get the slides after the webinar, but also you can just find the reports from Deloitte and explore them yourselves. The thing is that, yeah, we mentioned the domain expertise, we mentioned the T-shape regarding which skill set you need for each position. And then finally is the question, once you are already even within a company with a specific domain, what do you actually work on? What type of problem? And then, so these functions, which are mentioned here, this is from the German version of the report, is saying that most of the time it's about IT and production. And so marketing, for example, here is only like 8 or 10%. And if we go to the next slide, you will see why is this the case. It's because, and here you see like what type of questions are solved with data science and AI. And the topmost one is making processes more efficient. So it's nothing cool like I can recognize whatever people or distinguish between cow and a cat, but it's just about making processes more efficient. It's just about automation. It's about the decision-making improvement, what Andrew spoke about. And it's definitely not about reducing headcounts, for example, as some people are afraid of, right, when we mention AI. And yeah, it's about being data driven, lowering the costs maybe, but in general, you see here that, yeah, maybe this is something to have in mind, that at the end, maybe the questions that you will be answering, or your, so to say, importance will be just to improve processes in the company. And it's not as interesting maybe as the play examples that we yeah, do when we learn about some data science model, machine learning models, and so on. And then
I think this is very useful to the point that we were mentioning, that the domain expertise is on the rise, because if you want to make processes more efficient, you have to understand what is the process. Or if you want to improve decision making, you have to understand the logic of the business to be able to improve decision making. Yeah, well, I like it.
And to see where is it possible. Yeah, because I mean, I think that's another problem, that the people who are on the C-level, maybe they don't understand what is actually possible. Yeah, and what is doable. And sometimes processes are standardized and people don't even think that you can improve them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
And yeah, so this is a kind of motivational slide, because it says that, especially about Germany, one of the biggest problems or obstacles why AI cannot be implemented that much in the companies is because of the lack of experts in the field. And as you see here for Germany, this is like the top 3 reasons. Is in the top 3 is lack of competencies, whereas in the rest of the world, a higher value have managing the risks of AI, or maybe data protection, or the integration of AI. But or the high costs. And in Germany, it's still the market or the lack of skilled experts. And this is also where it leads us to the next slide. I saw we have some questions. I think we can answer them, but yeah,
No.
maybe. Sorry?
No question. It's not a question,
Okay.
just a comment.
A comment. Okay, good. Yes, the slides will be there. Yeah, I know that we are sliding fast, but I just wanted to say that yeah, seeing this, so to say, seeing this trend of lack of expert, unclear market and unclear role descriptions maybe, and not standardized differentiation regarding the roles and regarding the how you can move, yeah, on the data career ladder. The AI Guild is trying to improve this really in action, so to say. And yeah, so one thing that is you can observe the market, make connections as you are doing today, network, then look for things you are interested in, and then finally once you are there, once you are further in the ladder, let's say you have few years of experience and you want to exceed further, you can come back, or maybe even better, you are already long with us and you can think about the accreditation process that we have just launched this year with the AI Guild. So here you can see the list of people who got accredited first as expert in their particular domain in the data science world and in AI in general. And I think here also it's worth to mention that although this is meant for people who are experienced, one can use this, especially if you check the web page that I think Dania just posted, you can see the level of expertise and the competency elements which are required to become an accredited expert. And I think this is a perfect, so to say, checklist where you can see, okay, this is what I need. It's like even like a to-do plan, you know, because you can see very clearly what kind of things you can work on in your career path, even if you are already working, and discuss with your lead maybe, or if you are on the starting, so to say, side, just to know what you have to achieve in order to become an accredited expert, which in some sense we believe is like equal to a really great data or AI expert, right? And yeah, so please check that web page. And I think with that we will wrap up if there are no further questions. And maybe some last words from Dania and Andrew.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the time, so thank you for staying until the end. We are 5 minutes past the 1.5 hours. So yeah, time runs fast, especially because we end up in the discussions, answering the questions. So thank you for everyone that joined, and especially the ones that sent the questions. I hope we have helped you. And I would like to ask Andrew if you have some final words.
Just to say thank you, Dania, for the invitation, and thanks to everyone for participation. It was a lot of fun.
Cool, thank you. Thank you all. The slides will come to you via email, and the recording should be available on YouTube. So you can find the AI Guild, the website. You can find AI Guild on YouTube, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. And if you haven't yet, please join the community. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining, and have a nice evening.